from the Drew Estate Cigar Studio in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome to the Spare Notes series with your hosts, Matt Tobacco and William Cooper.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Spare Notes series. My name is Matt Tobacco from SmokingTobacco.com, and I am joined once again by my friend Mr. William Cooper of Cigar-Coop.com. I am in the Drew Estate Cigar Studios once again. Coop, how are you this fabulous evening?
I'm doing really good, Matt. Great to be back in our routine here. A little earlier tonight, but ready to roll. So I think it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so the topic for the show this week was primarily, it's July 30th, okay, which to some might mean the Major League Baseball trade deadline. To others, it's, we're definitely past the halfway point in the cigar season, right? So we're looking at August. I know it's early. I'm not saying let's pick number one and that's the one that's going to be. But we're going into August. PCA's over. PCA stuff, some of it has started shipping. Things are on shelves. We're looking at the fall. Right after fall is the holiday season. It's going to be here fast. So the theme for tonight is, now that we're past the halfway point, what is out there that we saw this year that we like? Predictions for contenders going into the Cigar of the Year season. I'm not talking about, picking what the number one's going to be, but, maybe cigars that might make it into the top 30, top 25 as a lump sum. What's hot? What did we see this year that we like? What hit shelves that we really liked? What's in the running? What did we not like? What's definitely not going to be in the running? There's definitely a lot of them out there. I have a small list of my own that I'm really excited about. Coop, I'm sure you already have yours that you're always probably continuously working on. So that's kind of where I wanted to start with this show tonight. Is just kind of, let's start making some very early predictions, right? Pre-game season for award season, really early, summer league, if you will. But I wanted to kind of to gauge and put a barometer on where the industry's at with some of the releases so far.
Yep. No, I think it's a good idea. For me, and I'll get into it. Like, it's coming faster than you think, because I have some deadlines that are involved, and I'll kind of get to that. So for me personally, it's coming much quicker than you think. But
yep.
Really, once these PCA releases, you have this, like, I'd say August to October window where everyone's focused on these releases. Then you get into October, November. That's where it's a very compressed window. And that's, I think, where a lot of the problems happen with the new cigars. They don't get their fair due. And then most people are doing their lists in December. If they're putting some effort into it, they're doing it in December. You did mention one other thing. And I'm going to get this in now because I don't know when I'll get it in. But
hold on. I'll let you get it in. But before we do, so we can get our cigars going, let's cut them and light them.
Yeah.
Our cigars, we're going to cut and light tonight, brought to you by Cigar Blondie. Cigar Blondie cutters and lighters are fabulous pieces of accessories in the cigar industry. I'm going to use the cutter right now. Make a nice clean snip right off the top. I got to say, really nice cutter. Really durable, sharp, not flimsy. Some of these spread guillotine lighters, you open them and you can see them bend and flex.
Yeah.
This is a solid, heavy-duty cutter that cuts right through.
I like this. I like this cutter a lot. The blades are, you can see they're really durable, surgical steel blades for sure on this thing. It has a great motion. And I'm gonna be I'm actually writing up the Tatuai 7th Tuxla tonight.
I'm going to light up the Crux Epicure Habano. I don't believe this is out yet. This is from the PCA trade show. This is a pre-release sample. We're also going to light up with the Cigar Blondie lighter featuring the signature Blade Flame. Look at that. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's a little, you can see maybe the Blade Flame, but you can see the little blue umber. When they sent this to me, I was really impressed with with the packaging and just the quality of this. So I'm pretty excited about this too. And it comes in this nice. I don't know. You saw the packaging, right? It's this nice.
Oh yeah, it's smart packaging.
Smart packaging. It's got the little
packaging designed by Humidiv Group, who has been innovating with some of the smart technology. Has NFC, near field communication technology. That's what that stands for. basically a technology that a smartphone or a like device can pick up by close proximity. So if you have like Apple Pay, right, that's what it is. When you go to Apple Pay and you tap your phone on the keypad instead of pulling your credit card out, that's what it is. The same technology can be put in paper products, packaging. It's on cigar bands now. Placencia uses it on their bands. You put your phone near it, and bing, the link to the website pops right up, and you can learn all about it.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff. It just really like all around, from the actual cutters and lighters themselves to the packaging to the NFC. Just this is an awesome launch, and I believe these launched at PCA
Yes.
this
Yeah.
year. So these are brand new.
Yeah. And for folks that don't know, this is Leo from Platinum Nova Cigars who's launched this accessory line. And like I said, I was very impressed. This slim lighter is just really, really nice. I mean, it just fits in your pocket.
Oh yeah.
It's probably one I'm not gonna put in my pocket because I'll lose it, right? So it's probably gonna stay on the in the studio here, where I can just make sure I have it handy.
You know, I hate to do it like this, but it's really the only way I can make this comparison. Anyone who knows me personally, you know that I'm a huge I'm an ST DuPont person. I have multiple DuPont cutters and lighters, Line 2s, Maxi Jets. I'm very picky. I've had too many finicky lighters that have broken down, cheap cutters and stuff like that. And I'm one of those people where it's like I'd rather spend the money and have good quality than to just keep buying cheap stuff. You want to be able to rely on it. This stuff, I'll tell you, when I pick it up and I hold it and I look at it, I mean, it reminds me of that DuPont quality. It's heavy, it's solid, it's...
Same thought going through my mind on that.
Yep.
And like I said, just that quality is there. What I like is I do like a jet lighter as opposed to an open flame. So this is...
Nicole's the same way.
Yeah, I just think with a cigar... once you go on a trip to Nicaragua or the Dominican, you're going to understand why open flame lighters just are not really fun.
Too windy.
It's too windy, exactly. But yeah, the cutter's really nice. I mean, this is just, and it comes in a nice set too. So, and it did a good job. So, clean cut, nice burn. So, I'm happy as a clam right now with this.
Yeah, me too. I like I said, I love the quality of the cutter. That blade flame on the lighter is different. It lights really well, nice and smooth. If you hold it the right angle, it really toasts nice and evenly, which is really nice. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, so definitely check this out. Yeah, this was just fresh out of the show.
Now I wanted to get back into what you were about to say. I'm gonna let you hit that.
Oh, because I'm gonna derail us. Have you noticed that since the baseball All-Star break, what has happened to the San Francisco Giants?
Would they have like a 9-game losing streak, if I remember correctly?
They had like a 7-game one and won.
Sorry,
lost again.
Nope, no, you're good.
I'm just saying it. For everyone who told me last year that how wrong I was about Gabe Kapler, that how, he shouldn't have been fired from Philadelphia. They should have hired Girardi in place of him. And this guy was misunderstood. It's exactly the same thing that's happening in San Francisco. That was the epic collapse of 2018. And just so people understand, they may not understand the context of this, right? They have to go 58-5, something like that, to tie last year's record. That's how big of a drop-off this team has had.
I just want to point out for all the people who know about the Gabe Kapler situation when you talk about William Cooper, you see there's just a shit-eating grin on his face as he goes through that whole rant. He's just so excited to have his soapbox to be like, look at Gabe Kapler fucked up again.
But I said it for 2 years. Like people, I just never waffled. When I said he shouldn't have got manager of the year last year, I stood by it 100%. I never changed my position on this guy. I said, just wait. The floor is gonna dry. It took a little longer than I thought. I thought by like the end of year one we would have saw this, right? But it happens. It's happening now, and for all the San Francisco Giant fans, here's the thing: get rid of him now, get a new manager in there, and I'll be rooting for you guys as long as you guys aren't playing the Phillies. So I mean that's what I want for you guys. I don't have anything against the San Francisco Giants, but I called this. And it's not just like it's the way they're losing. It's just like what was happening with the Phillies 2 years ago. Blown leads, blowouts, not hustling, lack of baseball fundamentals. This is all the stuff we saw 2 years ago or 3 years ago in Philadelphia.
I mean, to be honest with you,
you have egged on in this argument, which is why I'm using this platform tonight to make this proclamation here.
This is not fair because I don't have Terrence Riley with me.
That guy can't even know what a proper cheesesteak looks like. Come on.
Coop,
we won't get into. We got into that at KMA this morning, and
so minus the countdown screen. We've only been on here for about 11 minutes, and in 11 minutes, and then we spent a few minutes on that. So you only get like a handful of minutes, and the first handful of minutes that you've opened your mouth on this show tonight, you have already started to throw daggers at people, and that I feel like you're setting us up for a night of Coop firing shots. I don't know. I think tonight's going to be Coop firing shots.
I have. It's interesting. I'll kind of bring this in a little. So I have my editorial coming out on probably Monday on the PCA.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of arrows, and the arrows weren't actually directed at the PCA in most cases. In fact, maybe only one arrow was directed to them. It was directed. I had to pull it back. It was too hard. Some of it. I like, and Lisa, who does some of the editing, she's like, "This is." I said, "Yeah." So I did pull some things back and kind of soften the tone a little bit because it wasn't meant to stab anyone in the back hard. But yeah, there's a few things I've observed coming out of the trade show. That I think need to be said. Yeah.
Well, I mean, as long as you're being honest about it and you can back it up with some information.
Yeah.
It's pretty fair. But no, I mean, so getting back to the topic at hand, I'm not even going to engage on the Gabe Kapler thing because, you know what, there's really not much I can say right now, but I just have to hope that he can turn himself around and we can just go back to being
himself around. He's turned it around. He's turned it back. This is the real Gabe Kapler you're saying, yeah.
Never gonna win with you. So anyway, don't make me get Alan Rubin. I will get Alan Rubin in here.
No, please don't do that. Listen,
see how uncomfortable he gets. No.
I mean, I think I'm entitled to have a platform here tonight.
Oh man,
please don't he's happy in Texas. Leave him there. he's McAuliffe's problem now, not ours.
Wow, Coop. Wow.
Just kidding, McAuliffe. I'm sorry. Just kidding.
He's McAuliffe's problem. Wow. Hey, I didn't say it, Dan and Andy and everyone over there. It was all Coop.
Matt, I gotta say this, okay? So I sent him a thing about the Mets sweeping the Yankees this week, right? And he goes into this
Subway
whole
series.
Thing. Yeah, he goes into the whole thing about I'm busy. I don't consume my life around sports like you do. You're a troll. He's doing all this to me, right? And I kept saying to him, I said, well, what about all the messages you've been sending me about the Yankees all year? And he's like, I've been busy, blah, blah. So today, apparently he was busy, right? He was moving into his new place. He's buying a car, right? And this is on Facebook, so I don't think I'm saying anything that, is not public. But he had time to message me. I think Aaron Judge is going to hit 66 home runs today. Like, what? That's Alan. When things are going good, you'll hear from him on that. When they're bad, he's like invisible.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, he's got a safe face. It's funny. While we're talking about Alan, he was on with Lauren from McAuliffe on their show. I think it was it last Monday? Did you see that?
Yeah. I heard about this. I didn't see it. I heard about it.
So he was on there. I caught a little bit of it. To be honest with you, I was preoccupied with a lot of other things at the time. But I saw it and I said, all right, I'll tune in because, it's Alan and I want to see what he has to say. I had no idea that he was a one of those old school matchmakers.
I didn't know that either. That's what I heard, actually.
Yeah.
That, he was, and we're not talking about, like for folks who was old as me, there was, you would call up, a consulting service. Instead of doing, what is it? Was it Tinder? I'm way out.
Oh, you mean like now? Yeah, like Tinder and Bumble, like the apps, right? Or like Match.com, before all that existed.
Right, but you would actually call an agency, right? And you'd have a consultation, like you'd have, and then they would actually work to find you a match. I mean, this was old. This was the old school matchmaking services, right? And
Wow.
apparently he look. I'm not making fun of him, and he works honest work, so I don't make fun. But I didn't know even 10 years ago. I didn't know they were around. Apparently, he was doing this, 10, 15 years ago. I didn't think they existed for a long time. So apparently, they do.
I heard it and I stopped because I had it in the background and I was at my computer and I had stuff going on all the screens and I was like all over the place. And then I heard it and I just stopped and I'm like, wait, what did he just say? And they're talking about it and I was like, I'm like listening. I'm like, is that what I think he's talking about? And then I was like, no way. And then I'm thinking about Alan and I'm like, I'm picturing Alan just being like on the phone being like, I have a 35-year-old male. He's a fireman, and and he's a good-looking guy. I think you're gonna like him. You guys should hook up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I couldn't help it. I had a little chuckle. It was funny.
Good for him. Good for I don't.
But
make
good for
fun of
him.
Anyone. It was interesting when I heard this, and I didn't notice about Alan, and maybe he told me in my old age I forgot, but I don't think he did. I mean, I didn't know they really existed anymore. I thought it was, the apps. I mean, the apps have kind of replaced like Match.com, even from what I've seen. So.
And
Yeah,
Nicole and I met on Facebook dating. So. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah, there you go. There you go. I always wondered, they actually, if you really go back into like the '80s with these dating service places, they had offices that you'd go into. I mean, so literally, people like these consultants would work out of an office, and and I remember I've never been in one, right? Luckily, I've never had to do that, but I've seen the offices like around New York City and stuff. So
now, Coop,
yeah,
with your advanced age, right? You'll probably remember this. So didn't they used to also do it like in the newspaper too? Like people would put like in the newspaper like, oh, like this is like what I look like and this is what I do. This is what I'm looking for.
The personals.
Yeah, that was a thing,
personals.
right?
It was called the personals. Yeah, and if you watch, there's a movie. Madonna did her first movie. It's called Desperately Seeking Susan. It's kind of there's a play on the personals in there. But yes, this was a big thing, and the fun thing was like going and reading the personals like on a Sunday, and they had the expanded it was in the classified section, right? And you take out like one of the hey, you took out a classified ad to sell a car. You take out a classified ad saying, hey, I'm 5'6" and out of shape and dark hair. You want to date me or something like that? That's what you do with that. Yeah, it was called the personals.
And then after the .com boom, Craig decided he would add a personals to Craigslist. And
Craigslist kind of replaced classified ads.
And that did not go as well, I think, as that they had hoped it would go.
No.
Most people, at least if you're over the age of probably 25, have at least heard about the Craigslist personal. I don't even think they do it anymore because it got so out of control. We're done.
Yeah.
So, so there's that. Now people just do the apps and they hook up and that's it.
They do.
So
they get a push notification, I guess, on it. Yeah.
Hey, someone likes you. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
It's like weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to the bar and meeting people and just like, I don't know. People are lazy now, People are lazy. They just want to sit at home and be like, all right, yo, cool, let's do this. It's like there's no effort involved. You just swipe. Anyway, I shouldn't talk. That's how I met my wife. So, anyway, let's get back to the main topic at hand. So, contenders for Cigar of the Year. Now, we can kind of go through this one by one. Throw a cigar out, talk about it. If we, see if the other ones had it, what we thought. Right off the bat, one of the cigars that very, very early in the year, I smoked a couple of, and I said, this is in the running, is the All Saints Colorado. The St. Francis Colorado.
Okay.
That was one cigar for me that I had, and I said, I love this. Now, the St. Francis was on my list last year. It made number 2, and Mickey Pegg has not let me forget about it. Every time I see Mickey, he always talks about the Bridesmaid Award. Sorry. I mean, I don't know. He's never going to let this go. What is your thought feeling on that one?
Um, I don't think it's a contender.
Really?
Nothing against Mickey. Nothing against the cigar. Mickey's got to work on casting a wider net with online media before he's going to start getting these type of ratings. His net has not been cast wide enough.
Okay.
And I think he's got to work on that because the way online media works is online media specifically will gravitate to the cigars that they're getting exposure to. So he's gonna have to work that harder to get. Now, this is not saying I don't think the cigar is a. By the way, it's a very good cigar. And people who are getting exposed to it, I think, are gonna definitely have it under consideration. The problem is, I don't think his brand has gotten enough. That net's been cast wide enough yet.
Okay.
He's got to work on that one more. Yeah.
Very fair assessment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go a different direction. Now
Mhm.
actually it's two cigars, and I think
Mhm.
already you know where I'm going, but they weren't eligible on my list or your list for last year, so
Right.
they are now eligible for the 2022 list, and
Mhm.
those are the two cigars, the limited run, Ferio Tego Elegancia and Generoso. Now we did see them make some people's lists last year because everyone kind of has different policies, but the way you and I kind of operate are not the same, but similar. They were not eligible for either one of our lists last year, so they will be eligible this year. Do you see both of them making your list, one of them, or neither?
I actually the Generoso is not the score. The review hasn't been published yet, but it did get a 90-point rating, which will put it definitely into play right now.
Mm-hmm.
The way my list is gonna go, it's probably gonna be 90 and above. And I think it improved a lot more. So it kind of moved into that range. Now the issue is I'm gonna be basing mine off the 2021 cigar. I did smoke the 2022 Generoso, and I think it was even better. So it's kind of it has all the DNA of the Generoso. It's just I think the flavors just came back together better for whatever reason. Uh, Elegancia is still on the fence for me, but I have that review coming up. But yeah, I actually think that Generoso really surprised me.
I would probably echo something similar.
Mhm.
I thought that the Generoso was the better of the two. That
That's
cigar,
how I am right now. Yeah.
and I'm like that one. I'm like, the Elegancia was not a bad cigar by any means. It was very good quality, very solid cigar. It just did not wow me the way the Generoso did.
Yeah.
The Generoso was way more memorable for me than the Elegancia.
I can't disagree with you on that. It was unique. The Generoso was a very unique cigar. Um, the Elegancia has some similarities to the Sterling, but the Generoso seems to be on a class on its own. I believe.
I think so too. Now the Generoso was made at Plasencia, and
Yep.
the Elegancia was made, I believe, at Casada, if I remember
Yep.
correctly. So you have a Dominican factory, you got a Nicaraguan factory.
Uh
Um,
huh.
I mean, you got the Plasencia factory, which for me has been one of my favorite factories. I mean, almost every cigar that's come out of there has been pretty solid for me.
Oh yeah.
So it comes to
I
no
don't.
surprise.
No, I agree 1,000% on that. Yeah. And Michael's got a long relationship with both of those factories, and it shows.
Oh yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
does.
Yep.
Um, Now, Coop, I've given you a couple ideas. Why don't you give me a couple of things that you're thinking about so far, based on what you've already reviewed?
So I want to mention one. Well, let me just talk about ones I've reviewed, and then because there's some that I haven't reviewed that I think are going to be like more in play for CA.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so definitely the best cigar I've smoked in the last 12 months is not eligible for my list, like typical, like, and it's the Casa Magna Colorado Robusto, right?
Okay.
And I'm mentioning that because again, there's a 2-year window for releases. That scored a 93. I haven't had any 93s in a long time. But I think that's a cigar you could see in some of the publications because it's smoking so well right now. So I want to mention that one. A cigar that I haven't published a review for, but I anticipate a good score unless something has changed, is going to be the Alec Bradley Fine and Rare that was released this year, the 2022 one. Might be the best cigar Alec Bradley's ever released. And it's been popular on the Coop team. It's not just one that I've liked. just about everyone else has liked it except for Aaron Loomis, but he hates everything. So I think that's another one that is to be watched. Um, there are a couple of other cigars, and my list kind of is a little. My list is a little disjointed because I use this 2-year window, but I was impressed with the Espinosa Laranja Azulejo, and
Okay.
I was also impressed with the Monte Cristo Epic Vintage 12, which I think the one that got all the Monte Cristo 1935 got all the accolades last year.
It did.
But the Epic Vintage 12 is a very good cigar.
It was.
Yeah.
I don't think it got. I think that the 35th anniversary kind of stole its limelight. So
It
it's
did.
a
It
good
did.
point. I would
Yeah.
like to see how the Epic performs this year.
Yeah, I was very. I mean, it got a 91 on Coop, and that's definitely gonna probably put in this. I've only, just so you know, of about 95. I think I did like almost 100 reviews. It's like 95 to 100. I've only given a total of 9 cigars above a 90. So there's very few I've given over a 90 this year. And that Monte Cristo Epic, those cigars that I've all mentioned are some of them right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, another one that I had on my list that I'm curious. I think you've had, and but like I said, just be straight with me. The Amendola Family Cigar Co. the Padrino, the purple ribbon.
I haven't scored it yet. It's a good cigar. I don't know if I put it necessarily at that level.
Okay.
But again, I haven't scored it. It got me very. Yeah, that's that limited one that they have, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've had it. I've had it before. I haven't had it recently. It's a very good cigar. I would agree with you on that. I think they need. Again, I think they have the same problem that All Saints is going to have. I don't know how much. There's certain people. They've gotten those cigars into some people's hands, but not enough media's hands. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of TAA releases, I know how you feel about TAA releases, but are they eligible on Cigar Coop to be part of the list?
No.
Okay.
No, they're not.
And for those, and just can you explain why?
They're too limited.
Okay.
They're too limited, and it's really a buying club, and we don't. I don't include cigars that are in a buying club. They have to be national releases. Now, if they go national, certainly they're eligible. At that point when they go national, but yeah, it's a buying club, and I just don't like the idea that one retailer could dictate who gets it and another retailer can't. It's kind of like one of those deals. Especially if the other retailer is like spending the same amount of money with that company.
And for the same reason, well, it's not really the same situation, but it's a similar situation. This is why store releases are not eligible for usually on my list or his list, or there's a few others too.
Yeah.
Because it's for kind of the same thing. It doesn't get a national release. It's one store exclusive. TAA is not one store, but it's a large handful of stores. Not every store can get them. So that's just another reason. I know people ask, like, well, how come this so and so did? It's like, well, it's a short release for 12 stores.
Yeah, and the companies don't even promote them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
They count on either the retailers or the TAA to promote those releases, and if they're shop exclusives, they count on shop. They don't really promote them, and so I don't think they're very interested in it in a lot of companies. Some companies are more than others. Like LaFleur, I think treats their TAA releases. Crown Heads and Pete, I think, are the exceptions to that.
The best TAA release from 2021 is right here. No bias.
Which one's that?
La Flor Dominicana.
Yeah, I have it. I haven't smoked it yet.
This is the best TAA release for this year.
The best I've had in the last 12 months. I've had a 92 score on a TAA, which may come shocking to me considering I'm considered a TAA hater, right? Rocky Patel Vintage 2006 Bala was incredible.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
I know that
but
cigar.
There's only 3 cigars that got over 91, and that was one of the 3. And by the way, there have been some real TAA lemons coming out. Is what I'll just say.
We won't really mention any names, but I you've had more of them than I have.
Yeah,
But
but LaFleur's that Oro blend. That's always a solid. And I could get were you smoking the Chisel or the Solomon? It was hard to tell with that. That's why I was looking
the
at that.
chisel,
Yeah, the Chisel's the one that came out earlier this year. LaFleur's just
the
their
Solomon's coming
TA.
out this year.
If
But
look, if you're investing like in a TA, if TAA was a corporation, right? And you were and LaFleur was and they were making LaFleur, I'd invest in it. LaFleur takes their TAA very seriously, and that's why their cigars have been pretty consistent throughout the years.
yeah, and LaFleur hadn't released really anything new or different in the last couple of years, as they've kind of just been trying to weather the storm with everything else going on, and deal with people trying to accuse them of negative things, which are, not true. They're in a good spot. They just released. Oh well, they announced the Soli.
What a great cigar that was!
Great cigar. That's gonna. Maybe not this year. For some of us, for some maybe, but by next year, that cigar I think is gonna dominate some lists.
Yeah, well, you never know. I mean, Paladin de Saka was the #2 consensus cigar and never got released.
I know.
#2 cigar and like a halfway consensus, and it got released like one retailer. I heard. Let me correct. Ronnie Hayesha got some, is what I heard. Yeah, but no one bought it. No one in the media bought that cigar. But #2, right?
I got
So
like
anything could
5 of
happen.
them. I got 5 of them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, anything can happen on these lists. I'll just tell people.
This is true. Some people, I mean, that was like last year. One of the things we talked about with the list was Paladin Osaka was one of those cigars. The other one was the H99. Now, here's the thing with H99. At the time, when last year's lists were being built and coming out, H99 had originally been released in 2018 as a very, very, very small exclusive release. Right. And then they started kind of bringing them back a little bit, still very limited, but another batch went out last year. So they were out there, but they still were, very unobtainium. And earlier this year, Drew Estate has said, okay, we're going to make them more readily available, as well as Leo Anniversario. They announced a Lancero that's event only. There's now an H99 Robusto that's coming. So they're trying to get more of these. And look, the thing is, too, is the tobaccos that are required to make that cigar are very small and hard to come by. So, I mean, that's part of the process. But, back then at the time, before even all that, and they're still not even that readily available. So, but, they're going the right direction. But at the time, last year, people had that cigar on their list, and I'm like, well, tell me where you can buy it. I love it. Look, it's a good cigar, and I love Drew Estate.
Right.
But, it's not a reflection on Drew Estate. I mean, they're releasing how they need to release their product. But people who are putting on this list, like, okay, so you build a list, and you're telling people what cigars are good to go buy. Tell me where you can buy that, because as far as I'm concerned, H99 was an event exclusive last year that you had to spend $300 to even have a chance to win it at a raffle in most stores. So you put a cigar on the list that most people will be lucky if they get one from a friend or from an event they win it in a raffle or something. So it's hard to see that kind of stuff.
No, that's yes, and there's a big controversy on that.
And again, it's not on Drew Estate because it's not their fault.
I mean, look, 2 years ago, Year the Rat was like top 5 in the CAFO consensus. You couldn't get that cigar. Like, the people who smoked that cigar were media, and they found a way to work the media to do that, to get that they got the cigar into the media's hands.
Yeah.
And it's a good cigar when you smoke it, but had they not done that push, most media probably wouldn't have done that, right? With the case of the H99, there were a few floating around out there, I think, that was doing it. But do you remember? So there was one list last year, right? And I'm not going to name who it was, right? But so there was a cigar released last year, launched at the trade show by Protocol Cigars called the Bass Reeves.
Yes.
Right. So, but at the trade show, they didn't have the bands. So there were bands handed out with paper white bands instead of the final band packaging, right? Now, did you get one of those cigars with the paper bands?
Yeah, I have a couple of them. Or I had a couple of them. I think they're
Do you
gone
remember
now.
what was on that band? Yeah, and you might not know this, right?
I don't remember. It was a while ago. I think they're gone
All
now.
right, Okay, it said Protocol Bass Reese. It was like there was a typo of the name of the cigar on all those bands, right?
Oh, Jesus.
So this shows up on a list last year. And here's the other catch: the cigar actually wasn't released till a month later, right? So, so it was an unreleased cigar without the final packaging on there. I'm like, what the hell? But yeah, that has gone on. Like I said, so this is the whole controversy about reviewing show samples and reviewing things. There's strict rules. If you don't have your final packaging on Cigar Coop, you're not eligible. You are not getting on the list. So. Even if you're within the deadlines, the time tables, there's just no way I'll do that. You have to have your final packaging in place.
I think that a big part of it, too, is when it comes to these lists, right? Now, the purpose of these lists is to obviously, rank and rate the cigars that are the most sought after to get, right?
Yep.
That, we feel is these are the ones that we thought are the best or worth buying, yada, yada, yada. And I think some of the lists turn into this mishmash of this is my favorite lineup. And it doesn't matter if the cigars are available, if they're even on the market yet, or whatever the circumstances may be. If they were put in my hand or I acquired them and I smoked them and I liked them, nothing else matters. This is my list.
Yeah.
I get it, but I would say if you're going to do that, don't call it your cigar of the year. Call it your personal favorites list.
Yeah.
And then have a disclaimer of hey, not all these are available, but this is what I like. But don't say this is the list that you should, buy from.
Yeah, I've contended for many years that just about all of our lists are best new cigar lists. They're not best performing cigars. Because if it was best performing cigar, if I did that Casa Magna would be run away with it this year, right?
Oh, yeah,
it was
absolutely.
that far ahead of the pack. I can't do that because it's impossible for a small operation to do that. Because the question is, what are you smoking, right? And then it becomes, you selectively pick things and stuff like that, which is why most of us default to doing a best new list, right? We just can't do it. Now, I don't know how you are, but if you come out with a new Vitola, it's a new cigar in my book, so it's eligible.
Well, we talked about this.
New Vitola every year. You can come out a new Vitola every year and make my list. The way it works.
We talked about this on the last show. This is why size matters, right? Because when it comes to Vitolas, it's a different cigar every time. It may be this, the Rocky Patel DBS, right?
Right.
This is the Robusto. That's one cigar. The same Rocky Patel DBS Churchill is a different cigar. It may carry the same name, and it may use the same tobaccos, but that blend ratio is different. It is a different experience. It is a different cigar.
Yep.
So that is why. Well, but that cigar came out last year, not this size.
Right.
Which I think a lot of people need to remember. That's a huge part that goes into it. Dan Thompson's here with us. Good evening, Dan.
Yep.
He's a little late to the show. He missed. We were talking about Alan earlier, and now Dan's here. He missed us talking about Alan.
We just said Alan's his problem, with McCall's problem. No, not mine.
You didn't even have to say it. He missed it. You just shot yourself in the foot.
Well,
I said, Coop, I'm going to get Alan Rubin in here. And he goes, no. He's happy in Texas. He's McAuliffe's problem now. And I said, whoa. And then he's like, no. I'm just kidding. But no, it's always sorry to be late. Dinner was delicious. Dan, you're not late. If anything, you're early. We're early.
We're early tonight. Yeah.
We decided to do it a little earlier because I wanted to rearrange my schedule a little bit, and Coop was available, so we started this off a few hours earlier, just to kind of get the game going. And I think people like Jay Davis is not with us. I think he's still working the store, and he probably has no idea we're live right now.
Yeah, he's gonna feel bad too, but he's a good guy.
He'll watch it. He'll watch it though.
Yeah.
He'll miss out on the live commenting, but he'll watch the show. He'll fall asleep listening to that show. He'll make sure he gets it right away. So Jay is with us in spirit as always. Talking some more about cigars. What else have you? Let me ask you a question. So you mentioned in '93.
Right.
What are some of your other highest rated cigars this year on Cigar? Coop.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, Cigar Coop, again, we tend to be a little behind. We don't review stuff as soon as it comes out, right?
Okay.
But we try to review stuff that's, like I said, your 2-year window eligible prior to the trade show. But here's another one that scored a 92. And this is the Postani Warbear Toro. By the Hustler guy, by Postani cigar.
Yeah.
That, I think it's the best cigar to come out of Skip's factory. That Warbear Toro. Here's what I'll say. Last year, that cigar was reviewed just after the deadline, like before the list was made, and had it been reviewed a week earlier, it would have probably beaten the Rocky Patel out. I'm being honest, right?
Wow.
So because it would have skimmed it. I'm not saying so. It's going in very strong this year, but the cigars do get re-smoked, so the re-smoke could move things up or down. Is what I'm saying. But a 92, you're landing on the list. You'd have to basically the tobacco would have to disintegrate for a 92 to fall off the list at this point. So yeah, that really good cigar by Postani, very small brand. We covered them at the trade show. I know you did the whole show with them. With How About That Cigar?
Yeah, a couple weeks
Mike's
ago.
a good guy, and he got good palate, and they did a great job with that cigar. The other one, and this is eligible, right? This is eligible, is the Tatuai Monster Mash Frank. I think it was an excellent cigar. I really enjoyed that cigar. It's been the best. I've smoked 7 of the Monster Mashes thus far. It's been the best of the 7 by a significant margin. That got a 91.
Now, I believe. Sorry, if I just want to add this in there. Last year, Pete got a. Was it a 91? He had another very high-ranking cigar on your list and on Half Wheel's list last year too, and I think it was one of the T110s, and I think it was it the Habano? No.
The Habano got a high rating. The Habano also got a 91, but it missed the deadline last year because it came out after it just missed it.
Okay.
For review, yeah, because it has to be reviewed. It also has to be reviewed on Cigar Coop. That's the other thing. So it has to come out before the trade show that year.
Yep.
Within the 2-year window, and it has to be reviewed before October 31st. So it just missed it, but yeah, that got a 91. As well as the Reserver. The Reserver was really good in that T110.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, and I'm like, because P could have multiple cigars eligible for the list this year. Am I right? Yeah.
He's got a couple in there because I would say right now there's 2 that he's got. The Monster Mesh Frank and the T110 Reserve are probably the ones that are in play.
Yeah. So he's got 2 cigars in play. Your list, probably my list, as well as several others. Correct me if I'm wrong. Pete has not gotten the title with CA yet. Am I right?
No.
He doesn't have one, right?
No, and he's gotten
But he's been close.
He's been top 10.
Yeah.
He hasn't gotten into that top 3. And the top 3 is kind of key because when you get actually the top 4 in case there's a Cuban because they invite the top 3 non-Cuban cigar makers to the Big Smoke. So I don't think he's gotten that high. And Pete, if you're listening, correct me. He's made the list every year. But he hasn't gotten that.
So let's take a pause from the cigars themselves, right? We talked about this topic last year. We'll bring it up again. We talked about people who are due. Even if you're looking at the big list, the cigar aficionado list, people who are due, right? Rocky's never had one on CA's list. Pete Johnson,
that's number 2. Yep,
he's had number 2. He had number 2, but he's never had
Yep.
number 1. Pete Johnson hasn't made it into the top 3. There are some cigars, at least in some makers and brand owners, who've been around a long time and have not gone to that premier level. They have not come home as the Super Bowl champions.
Right.
Who else in your mind do you think is due outside of those 2?
I'd put a Luzioni into that. Dion's a guy who's made the list quite a bit, and he's had a lot of top 10s. I think he's been number 3 a couple of times. So I think he is one that certainly has been knocking on the door, and that's why I look at knocking on the door as the key thing. Um, Anything involving AJ Fernandez is another one. He's knocked on the door as well with the Monty 1935. He got close to that.
Yeah.
I told you my theory last year though that Altadis is going to have a tough time getting a number 1 because they carry these non-Cuban markers, and I just don't believe Cigar Aficionado is going to send a mixed message on this yet. I don't think I've always said that. So if Altadis is going to get like a number, I think Altadis is very much due for a number 1. They got to probably have to get it through something like Henry Clay or something like that, but not through Monty or Romeo. It's going to be tougher. So but I think Altadis is certainly knocking on the door with that as well. We've talked, I think Plasencia, but they haven't really been doing it long enough yet. I think they're knocking on the door, but I think they're going to have a way to go with that. I also think Alec Bradley's due for another number 1 at this point.
No, they've had one though. They've
had one, yeah.
What year was that?
2010.
2010.
2010 or 11, yeah. It was one of it was 11. It was 11.
Padron got it last year.
Padron, and they were due for a long time with it.
Yep.
There's other companies that I look at that I just think, I don't. J.C. Newman's been on the list, but I don't think they've knocked close enough. Foundation may be one to look at with Nick Malolo. Ashton's another company that's been knocking on the door for a long time.
Yep.
They've had a little bit of a slump the past few years, but Ashton's not had a number 1 either.
Fuentes had it multiple times, I believe.
Fuentes got they've got 2. My Father's got 2. Padron's got 4. EP Carrillo has 2.
Yeah, EP Carrillo has 2. LaFleur has 1 with Andalusian Bull.
LaFleur has 1 with Andalusian Bull. Yeah.
Does Ashton have 1 yet at all?
No.
They've never had one. Really?
They've never had one.
Hmm.
And that's why I think they're one to really be banging on the door. And kind of if aficionado gives one to Ashton, it's kind of giving a nod to either Fuente or My Father.
Depending on what cigar it is, yeah.
Depending on which cigar it is, yeah. It seems like, lately it's the Nicaraguan side of the house, La Roma de Cuba and San Cristobal that have really been getting the ratings lately. I think Pepin, we've talked about Tatuaje, we just talked about San Cristobal, La Roma de Cuba. I think the Garcia tobacco in the last couple of years has really upped its game, and it's showing now on the products, right?
It's one of my favorite factories right now. I mean, they got some good stuff.
They do, and I think they were in a little bit of a slump about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm going to be honest with you. I think when they started to turn the corner with the Fonseca, and I don't think I just think that they just weren't getting good tobacco, or as good a tobacco. Let me be good. They weren't getting bad tobacco. They weren't getting as good a tobacco but now it seems like they're getting good tobacco. This Tatuaje Tuxla 7 is fantastic, right? So I think you're going to see My Father have much, and I've had this conversation with a few other folks too, and they agree with me. These cigars are coming out better out of My Father, so watch out for brands like Tatuaje, Ashton, and of course My Father, because I think they're better cigars that are coming out right now.
I agree 100%. My Father is definitely one of those factories that it there's a lot of stuff I've had that I'm like, wow. And they've been quiet on that front. I think that they're definitely due. They should, and they've been around, big factory. I would rank them. I would rank them in the powerhouse factories list.
I would too. And I would definitely rank them. I had the 100 Años cigar, by the way. They gave me one. And we're coming out with a list of our top 5 cigars from the trade show on Coop this week.
Yeah.
This cigar, my criteria was no limiteds, unfortunately. So that was probably the best limited I had at it. That and the Espinosa Chef's Edition were the 2 best limiteds I had at a trade show.
Mm-hmm.
So it was. But My Father's getting really good tobacco right now. It's just, and I'm really glad because I think it's like I said, it's starting to show on everything coming out from my father at that factory right now.
What was I gonna say? Oh, and there's two other brands that come to mind that I never see in Cigar Aficionado,
Right.
and they've been around a few years now. They made a nice presence at the trade show this year. We've talked a lot about them. Quality-wise, that there's something I easily could see
Yeah.
being a number one at CA, but never really get any love there, and that's Adame and Byron.
From what I understand, and I agree with you 100%,
Mhm.
you've got to disclose the brands to get on the aficionado list. I don't know if that's my understanding about it.
So anything
insist on-
undisclosed does not count.
I believe so. I'm saying that because if someone tell me I'm wrong, you know what I'm saying? But I believe, but I agree. Because Atabey, I remember when I scored Atabey at 95. One of the Atabeys got a 95 score. That's an enormous score for me. Even when I scored higher, I wasn't giving out 95. So I agree. And, their whole – I mean, Davidoff wasn't at the trade show this year, right? Selected Tobacco did a really good job of being the showcase luxury brand this year.
Yep.
They really did.
El Septimo was there, and they came with a lot of flash and stuff, but my feeling
they did, yeah.
is that most of the retailers and stuff just feel it's overpriced and it's too flashy. So I think in terms of, and again, that's not me. That's the pulse that I get from the retailers I speak to. I feel like people, when it comes to that ultra high end category, I feel like you're right. I think Atabey and Byron are more of a solid. I had more retailers coming up to me being like, "Hey, can you introduce me to Oliver Nouveau? I want to open an account." And
they paid their dues for a longer time than El Sept. And so they're still relatively new at this game, and I think they got to build a little more street creds. I think Selected Tobacco has built those street creds. Is the difference. So they're a little, El Septimo may get there. Is what I'm saying, but they're not there now. Because I'm sure I go back to 2013, 14. And people were talking about Atabey and Byron as the Dave Garofalo cigars. They were, and I was telling people, no, these are special cigars.
He has nothing to do with that.
He's not making them; he's distributing them. He doesn't make these cigars. Yeah,
he has no hand in that. But the only thing he does is he owns United Cigar, and that's about it. Oliver runs the show. Atabey and Byron, it's all done by Nelson Alfonso. Garofalo only, and I know that this is something they've talked about on Cigar Authority and stuff. And, people go like, "Oh, well, Atabey and Byron, from Two Guys Smoke Shop," and he does. He gets annoyed, and I don't blame him. He's like, "It's not a Two Guys Smoke Shop thing. It has nothing to do with Two Guys Smoke Shop at all."
Look,
we carry it, but
they have a lot to do with why they're popular. I wouldn't dispute it. When you have you have the number one podcast out there, and they do.
And they've done a great job pushing it, but it's not their cigar. And I know that Dave has worked very hard to be like, this is its own thing. Okay, I own the distribution company because it's a business move, and hey, good for him, and that's a great move. But it's not his cigar, and he wants people to know that. It's the Nelson Alfonso. I think people should be more excited about it being a Nelson Alfonso cigar than putting Garofalo behind it. I mean, Nelson's really he's the guy who put it together. I mean, look at some of the other stuff. I don't think people know, and I think that's part of it too. Is Dave's the face. He's got the show. He's got the store. People know who he is, and then that's great because he can move product. But I think that if you don't know, you should learn more about who's really behind it, because Nelson's got a marvelous story and accolades and all the stuff he does for Habanos.
Yep,
so,
I agree. I totally agree on that.
I mean, that's the guy. That's the guy. I mean, it's the Nelson Alfonso cigars. If the closest thing you're gonna get to, having stuff that's like those premier Habanos releases, it's gonna be Atabey and Byron, because that's the guy who makes the boxes and stuff.
And their booths. I've not been to Habanos Festival, but I have. I get press releases, and I do know people went. That booth very much had the vibe of the Habanos trade show booth. That's how they do it. And listen, I heard you guys on. This wasn't your opinion. I heard the How About That Cigar guy, and I absolutely was cringing when I heard, and I love Cigar Hustler Mike talking about getting an industrial warehouse to run our trade show. I cringed. I wanted to throw something at the wall. Like, no, that's not what. If you look, I understand everyone can't afford a Nelson Alfonso booth, right?
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. Those products was showcased in a way they deserve to be showcased. If you're going to charge $40 to $50 for a cigar, and if the market's dictating it, it's certainly their right. That's the way you should be displaying a $40 to $50 cigar product.
Like I said, I was the
Yeah.
one that said, one of the first people to say, that booth was designed, set up, presented. The cigars were presented in a way that if they had a Ferrari or Lamborghini on display in the booth, I wouldn't ask why. I would be like, oh, that's cool, because it would fit so well. I wouldn't ask, why is there a car here? I'd be like, oh, wow, this is nice.
Yeah, I remember when my dad, he moved from Lincoln Mercury to Lexus when he was alive and he was working. And there was a big change he went through in terms of running a showroom with Lexus. It was a different, and he had to go for, I remember it was just, he had to completely change his mindset at that point. He said, we're selling these cars right now. At the time, $40,000 was a lot for a car back when he was doing this, right?
Sure.
You have to change it, yeah. So I'm just saying, I understand that the trade show is not affordable for people, and I think they need to work on some costs. But we cannot take away, like Nelson Alfonso. If you told him you give him a tablecloth, I'm sure he would just say, "Guys, I'm not going to sell these cigars. These cigars are not meant to be displayed on a tablecloth. Nothing against having a tablecloth, but you know what I'm saying?"
Yeah, well, like in museum cases, it was like
it was, but yeah, it had this Habanos. Like I said, if you've ever seen the press photos from Habanos, it very much had that vibe, which is that museum. It's exactly the same vibe you're talking about.
or like if you've ever been to Tiffany and you like walk in and they have the
Right.
jewelry in those like glass cases, little
Yeah.
podiums. It was like that. It was like the little display light on it. It was just like, ooh.
I was wondering if they were gonna have red velvet ropes in there though, and I was like, I wouldn't have been mad if they did. Actually,
Honestly, I think it would have fit. I think it.
I actually think it would have fit too. Like, hey, don't get too close to that glass cabinet because you can knock it over. I mean, I'm dead serious on that. So, and you got. And sometimes these booths they look nice, but they're not the. I'm sure their booths were sturdy, but I'm just saying some of these other booths aren't sturdy. Is what I've seen people lean onto things at times. So yeah. But where were we with this? Where did we come from this?
We went on a tangent. Well, I mentioned that we talked about the CA list, right? And
that's why these cigars weren't on the CA list. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not usually on the list, and they're a cigar that I could see, winning that list. But then you added, I think a big part of it is undisclosed blends are not eligible. So they answered that question.
I believe so. Yeah, I'm gonna caveat that. And I believe sometimes people have disclosed blends to get on the list because they just make up anything. But
Maybe.
Yeah, if you go to historically, you won't see that. Is what I'm saying.
Here's a question though. Let's pretend, right? The CA list has a reputation of whatever it gives number one, that cigar now becomes unobtainable because it's number one, and everyone's like, oh, that's the one. And, that's what happened with the Andalusian Bull. It got number one, and now no one can get him, right? So, Atabey Byron is still small in terms of its production. So let's say Grand Poema gets CA number one. Let's play a hypothetical game, right?
Okay.
There's only 200 boxes made of that per year.
Mm-hmm.
What happens with them? I mean, that's a really small production. Now
they'll handle it just like Fuente did with Eye of the Shark. I don't believe they'll ramp up production a bit.
No, I don't think they will. But it'll be even harder to get.
It'll be harder to get because again, Nelson's all about that aging piece too. So he's aging the tobacco and then he's aging the cigars, right? He's only got limited capacity. So yeah, I just think it's going to be extremely unattainable.
So it's almost like we've had this conversation, the cigar of the year thing, right? Even not even just with CA. I mean, obviously the one that CA gives, just have us do. But even with some of the other lists, even some of the stuff that Half Wheel puts on the consensus and whatnot. And it's natural. You put out there in the world, hey, this is number one on this list. Everyone's got to go out and buy it. Then it becomes harder to find. So, it's a blessing and a curse, really, to get number one. It's nice to get the recognition. It's great. You got a number one, yay. But then, and you sell a shit ton of cigars, and that's great. And then you get to a point where you've sold everything because everybody wants it, and then people are begging you for more, and you're like, I can't roll them fast enough. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's definitely, but then there's certain cases I think that, like Florida Santillas, when that got number one, it was probably one of the most successful that I ever saw in my, following the list. That cigar it remained their number one seller at my father to this day. Interesting when Encore got number one and then Pledge got number one. Pledge was much more accessible than the Encore was for a while. It was, oh, the other way, I'm sorry. The Encore was more accessible than the Pledge. I mean,
Yeah.
because they immediately ramped up production of the Encore afterwards, but they were a little unprepared for the Pledge one because it happens. I don't think they were expecting that one. I think Encore, they thought they could get it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think, and it's different for everybody because some of these manufacturers, they put cigars out there, and everyone thinks that their cigar is great, right? I mean, they should. I mean, if you're putting that much effort and money into it and you put it out to the market, it should be the best it should be, right? But, realistic expectation, I am sure that, behind closed doors, people will say, like, this cigar is good. I think we're going to sell this amount. I don't think it's going to be, like, a banger, but it's going to be good. We're going to sell, 1 million units, 2 million units, whatever their projection is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said. And I think some of them get it right. Some of them don't. Maybe, with them that they knew, like, this cigar is just so good. We've already heard, I can't even talk today. Preliminary reviews from people, this is going to be hot. This is going to be good. Let's ramp up production now. They get number one. Okay, they're in a good spot. Some people put out a cigar. They're like, yeah, it's good, but we'll see what happens. And all of a sudden they get number one, and it's like, okay, we got to start rolling more. I think it's definitely a huge part of it. I think it depends on the size of the manufacturer. Someone like La Flor Dominicana, Andalusian Bull gets Cigar of the Year. It's a lot harder for them to ramp up production on Andalusian Bull because they already have a set amount of stuff that they make every year versus someone like Padron or Fuente. Those are already massive factories that make a lot of product. So for them to pivot on their production, it's just my point being it's easier for some manufacturers than others. So I guess it is a blessing and a curse, but I guess some manufacturers just can deal with that pivoting better than others because of just, how big they are.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like my father, I think they would be okay. I don't think anyone's just going to be squeaky clean and just be like, oh, we have plenty. I think people maybe have a little, but they'll be able to adapt to that and be able to put more into production and aging quicker and easier than some other folks.
Yeah, but let's say like for example, let's just hypothetically say the Florida Santillas 10th anniversary gets number one this year, right?
Yeah.
That's using Pelo de Oro, and I know that my father's very limited amounts of Pelo de Oro.
Well, this is a good part too. I know where you're going with this. This is.
So they're probably not going to have. They could have the capacity, but they may not have the tobacco to make it.
Yeah, I would say you're right. And
yeah.
The only stipulation to that too is it depends on what actual tobacco's in that cigar and how much of that's available. If it's a cigar that uses tobacco that's all readily available, that's one thing. But you're right. If there's something that uses something like that, where we could make 30 million cigars, but we can only get this much tobacco, like obviously that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I'm glad you added that in there. Another one. Perdomo. Now, last year we saw Perdomo clean up with their 10th anniversary Maduro. It was on my list. I believe it was on your list, was it?
Top 10. It was number 6. Yep.
Yeah. I think it was in my top. Was it my number 5?
Nick reminded me he didn't get number 1 either at the show. You'll see the video. It's funny.
Oh, yeah. Just like Mickey Peg always reminds me. He's like, oh, I came in second. I got the bridesmaid award. I'm like, every time I see him.
But Nick wants to be. They both want to be number 1. I'm like, this is good. I want you guys to both be number 1. I want you guys to work hard. So,
you should want to, right?
Yeah.
Perdomo. No, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, Perdomo. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say Perdomo. Has Nick gotten number 1 at CA?
He's never been rated by. No, he's never been ranked by CA. He's been rated. Interesting. They did rate the 10th anniversary of Maduro, which, in my opinion, probably in the last 4 or 5 years, has been the most successful cigar on the end of year lists. I think the two I look at in the last 7 or 8 years that have been popular have been the Perdomo 10th anniversary and Wise Man Maduro a few years ago. Just monster cigars showed up on a lot of lists.
Yeah.
But he does not have a 91 from what I've seen on the scores this year. So you'd have to have 91 to get on the CA list. And he doesn't have that, which is ridiculous because that cigar, like I said, it was on everybody's list last year.
It's true. Cigar
Yeah.
Authority gave it number 1. I think Tobacco Business gave it number 1.
Cigar
feel like-
Journal didn't get Cigar Journal give it number 1?
I think they did. I think
Yeah,
they did. I think they did. I
Yeah.
think they did.
Yeah,
So, I mean, they cleaned up really good.
they did. And
Didn't
that
cut it on
was-
CA.
That was a monster Perdomo release. in my
We both
opinion.
had it in our top 10.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so it's funny. When we talk about that whole thing, too, everyone talks about the CA list, and they're like, wow, that's like the list. Well, there's a lot of good manufacturers in cigars that have cleaned up everywhere else, and then they don't even make a splash on CA. So it's hard. It's hard to look at CA as like the be-all, end-all list. Now, I understand it's been around a long time. It's the big list. Everyone looks at that list. But I like to remind people, like, as much as that may be the stigma or the feel or whatever, there's cigars that perform at literally almost everywhere else very highly. And then when it comes to CA, you're like, well, where is it? And you're looking for it. And you're like, oh, it didn't make the list. That's weird.
Here's a real interesting analogy to look at, or comparison. All right, so that Perdomo, that 10th anniversary, I don't remember which size was the one, but I think it was the Toro was the one that got the most play, right?
Yeah.
Size-wise, right? And then I go ahead and I look at the CA's number 1 cigar last year, which was the Padron 1964 Torpedo. Which cigar had more buzz? And I'm going to say it was, and I'm not talking Facebook, right? I'm just talking into cigar shops with people. The Perdomo 10th anniversary easily had more buzz.
And let's just throw this out there, right? Padron's been around a long time. Perdomo's been around. I mean, Perdomo's been around much longer than Perdomo, but Perdomo's been around long enough. I mean, this
Right.
is 30 years this year.
30 years, yeah, the Padron's 55 almost, yeah.
I think 30's good, right?
Yeah.
These are both brands that consistently put out good cigars. They have strong reputations. They've been around a long time, very consistent, yada, yada, yada. Pretty evenly matched, I would say, right? I know Padron's a little bit more on the higher end price range, and they have some bigger releases and stuff. But when you
that's what
put
I
them
was saying.
side by side, pretty evenly matched, right? So to your point, very evenly matched. Look at them side by side. That's a fair statement. It's not like you're talking about, Perdomo or Padron and let's say All Saints, right? That's apples and oranges. Very, very. They can both still make good cigars, but you're putting something side by side. And you're right. When you go into shops and you see these brands, right? Every shop you go into, you almost see Perdomo, you almost see Padron. So you go in there and you listen, like, those are cigars that are always going across the register because everyone's always buying those cigars.
Right.
And you're right. I heard more about Perdomo, that Perdomo 10th, than...
Yeah, and look, I think Padron, the difference is that Torpedo, I don't see people clamoring for that Torpedo.
No.
They
No.
they aren't.
No.
They still probably are clamoring for other cigars in the 64 line. But Perdomo, I mean, I can tell you, look, Cigar Coop's very much a Google-driven. I use a lot of Google Analytics for mine, right? It's not a Facebook-driven site, right? At least sort of website I'm talking about. And I'm telling you, Perdomo has been Perdomo's one of the monster brands right now over the last especially that 10th anniversary, I should say, is one of the monster lines it's been. It's just that review I put out probably it's first or second in the last 12 months in terms of hits, in terms of reviews. So it's people are interested. They're googling, they're searching for that cigar.
Perdomo Champagne, huge selling cigar. Massive
Huge selling cigar. It still is.
Number one
It still
selling
is
SKU that they have.
Yep, easily.
Um,
And it's funny, the Sungrown, which is a great cigar, the 10th anniversary Sungrown, gets a little lost with those other two. It's still a really good cigar.
It does. You know what?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
still say to this day, and I've said it for years, and I still say to this today, you know, Perdomo's sun-grown cigars are some of the best sun-grown cigars I've ever had.
Yeah, I think in this case the Maduro was, and I usually lean towards his Maduros. So, but I think his Maduro was the clear winner this time. As far
I
as
100% agree.
Yeah, Champagne's a separate animal. I'll say it's a separate. It's been around for a long time. Yeah.
I was always very sun-grown with Perdomo for many years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I didn't have anything against Maduros. I just always just loved the sun-growns, right?
Yeah.
When that 10th
Yeah.
anniversary Maduro came out, I was like, I got to start smoking more Perdomo Maduro, and specifically the 10th.
Yeah.
But I was just like, wow. I mean, that cigar really blew me away.
I thought the ESV Maduro was better though.
Did you?
A couple years. Yeah. I think the ESV was. See, the ESV is a line I'd put against more of like a Patron 26. That ESV is that's cream of the crop line they had.
Yep.
But I think that's not as every. I think the 10th anniversary is much more geared as your everyday cigar. That's the difference. The ESV look, that's probably more of a special occasion type of thing you're gonna have.
I kind of got lost here in the shuffle. There was a couple of comments. Skip asked about what was the My Father cigar you just mentioned? I already forgot.
The 100 años, the
100
100
años,
100
yeah.
años, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that one. And
Great
then
cigar.
Mark said, I think Mark's talking about, he can chime in correctly. I think he's talking about the Perdomo 10th Maduro. And he asked, did it make the consensus? Because no one is buzzing on a cigar that's been around for years. I'm not. I kind of lost where he was talking about there. I'm not sure what he mentioned, but he can clarify. Sorry, Mark.
I think there was a Perdomo on the consensus. As much as we've given the consensus a lot of publicity on Coop, we're starting to pull back from that a little. I think there's just a lot of. I think some of the holes of the consensus are getting exposed again, and I think it does need a little. Like they made an overhaul a few years ago, and I think it needs a little bit of an overhaul. That's a whole other show topic, though. I'm not going to get into. I don't think Perdomo made the consensus. I just went down the list of it. So
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the consensus myself now. Yeah, they had in order from 1, Undercrown 10, Paladin d'Asaka.
Paladin d'Asaka.
I know.
It's a good cigar. But you and I, it's a good cigar.
I loved it. It's great.
I
still have some left.
Right.
Number 3 was a cigar that I know. I think was it your number 2 last year? The Adventure, the Queen's Pearls.
Yes, it was.
Number 4, the Joya de Nicaragua 200.
I didn't love that cigar.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I didn't love that cigar.
Yep.
I said if someone asked me about that at the show, I had like 3 of them, and every single time it was just like,
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't bad, but I didn't love it. It wasn't great. Number 5, Supreme Leaf. Now you know this. Let me just stop right here. Let's talk about Aganorsa Leaf for a second, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Mark just shot. What did he say? No one's buzzing on the Padron. It's been around for years. The buzz on Perdomo was because it was new.
He's right.
Yeah.
He's right. The thing I can't answer on that Padron was how it performed last year, that size. Or how it's performed recently, because I haven't smoked that size in a while. And that's the only way I could do a barometer if it was worthy of number 1. And I always tell this story, Matt. The year that Monte Cristo number 2 out of Cuba got number 1, if you smoked that cigar that year, it was exceptional. And Monte's but they go up and down. But that year I happened to have that cigar a few times, and it was exceptional. I wasn't surprised it got number 1. So I don't know the answer to that Padron story though. How what year they smoked or anything like that. It's tough.
Yeah, it's a good point. But let's talk about Aganorsa Leaf for a second. This is another factory. The buzz that I hear a lot of people say is that they feel that Casa Fernandez is not really making the best stuff that they've made right now. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts on that are.
if you looked at the Coop list, they have gone a little down. But they're doing some other things. I think you got to look at here.
Because I
Uh,
didn't fully agree with that,
I,
but it seems to be not the consensus list, the consensus of
there are
the
people who
chatter.
subscribe. There are people who subscribe to that, but I'm looking at some of the things that thing's doing as a factory. They
Hmm.
came out with the shade-grown Corojo Maduro. That was kind of a game-changing leaf. It's a newer leaf. Now they're doing the Corojo 2012.
Mm-hmm.
So they got some new things going. And look, I think it takes a few. It's gonna take a little time to like when you're working with like their Corojo 99 for as long as they did, and they're really good at it. Now you're doing something new. It's not gonna be. It's not out of the gate. You're probably not gonna get it right out of the gate the first time. Is what I'm saying. So I think we got to. I think we really got to see them continue to cultivate those crops and those harvests, and then obviously come up with some other blends, and we'll really see that. But I think as a factory, they're in an agricultural operation. They're investing in innovation there. So I think it's a little unfair to just say, well, this stuff's not as good because I think they're changing it a bit. Like I said, they only done one release with the Corojo 2012. It's at least for themselves. It's the Cerberus. So give it a little time, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I think you could make some arguments with that, but I think there's other factors going on. Like they could be setting themselves up for the next 10 years. Keep that in mind. But like I looked at Pepin now that they're growing their own wrappers, and I think now they're starting to get it right. So I think you got to just watch it for more long term.
I think so too. I mean,
Yeah.
the only negative thing I've really seen, um, the only cigar I smoked from them in the last couple of years that at first I was like, was the Rare Leaf. And I even
It's
told and I
more.
told Terrence and I go Terrence, I had a couple of them back home. I don't know. It was weird. It tasted weird, and he said, "Really?" And I told him my issues with it, and he's like, "Okay." And I was down in Miami at Aganorsa with Terrence, and he gave me another one. He's like, "Well, let's sit down and smoke another one." And I smoked another one. It was vastly different. I was like, "Yeah, this is very different." And I'm like, "This tastes a lot better than the ones I had." And he's like, "Yeah, there's a lot of factors. Things could change, but other than that, everything I've had from them has been pretty solid." And the only other thing I've heard anyone else talk about, and I've had the cigar. And I didn't think it was that bad. Then again, the biggest caveat to this, I think, was the burn issues, was the Cerberus. Now, halfway, I think it was Charlie who did it. Charlie gave that cigar a 75, 76.
Ben had issues with it too.
I
So,
had
not quite that low. Well, his score wasn't as low, but he had some issues with that cigar. Yeah.
I had two. I didn't have major issues with it. I think it performed well enough. I enjoyed it well enough. I mean, it wasn't like a 95, but I mean, my experience was not like a 75. That's the only thing I've seen people actually pick apart and say was bad. Now, I mean, you told me Ben had some issues. It doesn't sound like it was as bad, but I feel like I've been hearing that floating around, and I don't know if I fully agree with it. So I wanted to air that out.
No, and I think you make a point. The Rare Leaf was an interesting one. That cigar is it's more Criollo based. And by the way, Aganorsa does grow very good Criollo.
They do.
But they've been so focused on the Corojo lately that I think the Criollo's got a little more put on the back burner. So it's a very different type of blend. So it's different than anything else that Aganorsa has done. But I agree with you. I had a similar experience the first run, and the more recent runs have been better. And that's why, Matt, I hate the fact that people look at they judge a cigar that comes out November 30th, and if it's going to make the list or not for that year, because I've seen these things change. My initial we were just talking about Supreme Leaf. I didn't have as positive an experience with the Supreme Leaf at first. As the year went on, that cigar, and I happen to have some of those Robustos, it worked its way into my top 30. So it can happen. That's why I'm a big believer in making sure that all these cigars have enough time, and have. That's why I'm against the big crunch at the end of the year, because it just you get invalid results.
Yeah, and I believe, and I agree with you, and I think that cigars do need time. It's hard to if something hits the shelf, the week before Thanksgiving, and you're gauging it for the whole year, with 5-6 weeks of performance left.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
it's hard.
it's
Not fair.
hard. Now, yeah. I mean, there was a cigar last year that I would have had. I actually had ranked high. It came out late in the year. I smoked it this year. It isn't wowing me now. So what if I would have squeezed that on the list? And other people are talking about that cigar right now. So it's just not there. So that's why I believe every cigar should have several months in the marketplace, so you can make a fair assessment where it belongs at some point. With that. So like I said, I think the Aganorsa leaf, just to sum it up, I think we have to look at other factors of what they're doing here on this.
Going down the line on the consensus, just I don't know if I'm gonna read all of them, but it's just some of the ones we've talked about. Alec and Bradley, Alec and Bradley, not Alec Bradley. The Kintsugi, which I thought was a great cigar.
I thought it was a good cigar. It wasn't, but I thought their other two cigars they did were better. Yeah, but a lot of people like this cigar.
I really liked it.
It connected with the media. Yeah.
Nicole loved it.
See, to me, Blind Faith and Gatekeeper were better.
Gatekeeper,
Yeah.
I also really liked. That was real toasty. That was nice. I liked that a lot. Very good.
Yeah.
Rare Leaf Reserve is on here. We just talked about.
Uh-huh.
And there it is, the Monte Cristo 1935 anniversary that we talked about earlier in the show. The 35 is on the list. And number 6, I skipped this one. The Davidoff Dominicana. Did you have the Dominicana?
It's funny. I have a review coming up of it. Yeah, it's a limited production line. It's actually pretty good.
Now, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is how I understood it originally. The Davidoff Dominicana replaced the 702 series.
Yeah, no, they did discontinue the 702 series and they put Dominicana in, but from what I understood, 702 series was regular production. This isn't.
Okay.
Yeah. We just had Eddie Guerra on the show a couple weeks ago. He talked a lot about how Davidoff's very SKU conscious. They tend to try to keep the number of SKUs in their portfolio constant. And if they come out with something's coming out. Is because they have just a big portfolio.
When you continue down the line, Davidoff Winston Churchill Limited Edition 2021, which was that
I didn't like it.
I didn't have that one. But what I will tell you is I had this year's, the 2022, the Perfecto. I did not like that one. And I think that just the Vitola, I had burn issues with that cigar.
Not surprised.
And I just remember, where I had it. I was at Empire in Miami, and I was with my friend Kevin Acuff, and I said, I'm gonna smoke this. And he was like, oh yeah, I think he had some. And he was like, yeah, I had it, and it was good. And I had it, and I just remember sitting there with him for an hour and a half, and I kept relighting it, touching it up, and I was just like, it was tight. I kept trying to cut it down a little bit more without going too far. I was like, this is, and I looked, and I was like, this is just not even enjoyable.
Yeah.
It just felt like I was working. Like it was like it was work. It wasn't a leisurely experience. I was like, I'm working to get through this $45 cigar that I just bought because I don't want to throw it away. I'm trying to make it worth it, but I just feel like I'm working myself to get through this cigar, and I was very disappointed. So I am curious to see where that one lands on lists this year too. I mean, Davidoff usually performs very highly too. It's Davidoff, I get it, but I did not think that cigar was very good. And again, I think a lot of it had to do with the burn issues too. But you also said you weren't surprised too. Did you have this year's Davidoff Winston Churchill?
I wasn't wowed by it. Wasn't bad. I didn't have burn, but I wasn't wowed by it.
Disappointing, especially for how limited it is and what they go for. I think Davidoff's limited this year that got the most buzz was the Year of the Tiger. I think that was the one that they got the most.
I loved the project. I hated the blend. I thought it was one of the worst Zodiac cigars I had.
Really?
But I told Eddie, I wish they could find a way to work with that wrapper process on other blends.
Yeah.
I didn't think the blend under it was good.
I think Half Wheel gave that cigar, because they do the packaging list and stuff. I think that was in the top 3. I don't think it was number 1, but I think it was up there.
I would love to do a packaging thing, but you have to buy the packaging. And bravo to them. That's a significant investment. But I think you have to have the packaging in person to do those,
Yeah.
or at least access to it in person. So maybe at a trade show they could do it too. But it was great packaging. There's no question about it.
Um, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to go all the way through this list, but a couple more that I see on here that I think are interesting for last year's consensus. At 11 was the EP Carrillo, the Pledge. Interesting to see that at that spot.
Yep.
At 13, the Liga Privada Bauhaus.
We got to talk about that one.
Which one?
Yeah, the Bauhaus.
The Bauhaus. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
First of all, it made the Coop list, right?
It did.
There was a loophole with the Coop list that was kind of exposed, though. That's a European-only release, which are eligible on the Coop list, right? But going forward, if basically the rule is I buy all the cigars again, but I didn't rebuy that cigar. I'm being honest, right? I used what I had that Drew Estate sent out. Like going forward, I have to fix that where I have to go ahead and that's got to be bought next year. No one in the media bought that cigar. They got it because samples were sent all over the place with it. Otherwise, no one would have bought that cigar.
And I think at the time, I didn't get samples of that one. And when Nicole went to England, I was gonna have her get a box, and there was one there. She could have had it, and I decided, I was like, you know what? I was like, no, I don't want to buy a whole box. We went back and forth. There was a shopping list that she had, I think, and then that one got removed off the list. But yeah, I mean that's
Yeah,
a good
it's gonna
point.
it's gonna make it harder for European cigar to get on my list now. Is what I'm telling people, because I think the cigars I have to be if I get a sample from the company to make the list, I rebuy the cigar, or something that usually I'll do is I'll hold one back if I buy it.
Yeah.
But in this case, or if it's limited, I'll go buy it right away again. But yeah, this one I didn't. It kind of slipped out there, and I realized, hey, I smoked it using a sample, and that was just. And the list ain't changing once that happens, right? It was I exposed. Something got exposed with that. So yeah, but media, this wouldn't have even like. This is why media had this so high. Is what I'm saying, because they got this in their hands. Like, and that's where this is where, like I said, people like Mickey Peg, and Amendola are gonna be fighting this battle because there's only so many slots on this list.
Right.
Yeah.
There's something I thought of that I wanted to bring up. We talk about not everybody puts Cubans on their list. I don't. You don't. Half
They're eligible. They're eligible though, just so you know.
Yeah.
It's just they don't come out in time. Yeah.
Half Wheel puts them on the list. CA puts them on the list for sure. If you don't know, you know this, but to the audience, if you don't know, earlier this year, Habanos announced that they were increasing their prices and they were restructuring their pricing model based off of the pricing averages, I think is precisely how it was worded, based on the market in Hong Kong and China. From what I understand, it was specific to, they were basing their pricing off of something to do with the pricing in Hong Kong. And that was going to be the standard. And what happened is the two top premier brands from Habanos, Cohiba and Trinidad, saw price increases of almost 300%. Some of the more limited lines were even more. The new Cohiba 55 coming out, I've been told that cigar is already going to start fetching $400 or $500 a cigar. Bahique is already through the roof with some of their prices on their cigars too. You can find a box for like $3,500 if you can find one. Some of these websites you can go on, the people in the U.S. that buy Cuban cigars from, that they have them shipped in. Some of them you go on to, there's not much on those sites anymore. When Nicole went to England, she went to some places, they had nothing. She found a couple of packs of Cohibas at the airport. They were the only 2 packs they had.
I heard the airports have been cleaned out. I've heard a lot of duty free.
Like the duty frees,
yeah.
And that was before. That was before this announcement. Since then, the websites that shipped Cubans around the world, they don't even have anything on there anymore. And I think there was definitely a panic buy of, let's get it now. How do you think, if it does affect, I guess, I don't know, how do you think that affects some of those cigars going on lists in the future? Do you think that has any impact? Um, I don't know. I feel like the whole Cuban cigar. If you're a Cuban cigar smoker, because there's people that they're just not, and then there's people that are, and no matter which side you're on, it doesn't matter to me. It's everyone's personal preference. But the Cuban cigar game is really going to change with these price increases.
And I don't again I don't know what to make of it. You know, when Cuba opened up, right? It wasn't like Cigar Aficionado had more Cubans on that list, right? So I'm just saying I don't know if that the supply or demand thing affects them. I think it could affect Cigar Journal a little more. You know, I don't know how Cigar Journal does blind sendouts, right? They send out the cigars blind, but did they unban Cubans and send them blind to like the U.S.? I always wondered that.
I don't know.
I don't know how to do that either. I'm just asking. But because if they're sending the cigars out, they got to be able to import them. I think it could affect the Cigar Journal list a little more. And I know Cigar Journal has put Cubans on the list. Yep. I just don't know how they handle like to the reviewers on that. So it's a fair question. But I don't think it affects CA that much. I think they're gonna find a way to get those cigars. But what you may not see Cohiba 55 on these lists either. So.
Yeah, I would say that the market for Cuban cigars is definitely changing. I mean, look, availability has already been struggling the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic and everything. Now you go and you price out all your cigars. Whatever was out there, whatever was left, people grabbed because they knew that they knew that the hammer was about to fall. They got to grab some stuff before it goes through the roof. Now pricing has, I believe that pricing model has gone into effect now. I think that is in effect as of right now. So Cuban cigars coming out to the market now are 3 times more expensive than they were last year, and they were already hard to obtain. And that's before you even take in taxes in some of these countries where they're available, because they're not available here. But you look at some of these other countries, the tax rates on tobacco and cigars. So I mean, you're dramatically increasing your MSRP price, right? You know that not everyone always follows that, depending on where you are. Then you add on some of these tax rates. I mean, does this kill Habanos in the long run? I mean, it's just like I'm trying to follow along with this. Like, I don't, you know. Or do they just feel that there's enough high-end clientele out there that, some of these pricing, I have people come to me like, oh my God, have you seen the price of Cohiba now? Like, I could barely afford it before. Now I'll never have them. Well, it's the way the world works now.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you.
And is this a long-term thing? Is this the new thing, or is this temporary?
They got to be able to sell cigars, right?
Yeah, supply
and demand ultimately. I think supply and demand will ultimately solve that.
I don't know. Just interesting. Not so much as a concern for the U.S. market. Well, unless, I don't think it'll happen anytime soon, but unless the embargo ended, and then they did come, which we've always talked about, you know, that it's not an impossible possibility. It just doesn't seem likely right now. But I think eventually, someday it'll happen. I don't think that that'll be in place forever. I think that probably will come down eventually. And then when it does, I mean, that's a whole nother series of problems that we don't even have time to get into. But it is interesting just to think about, you know, just how expensive the Cuban cigars have gone. It's insane. Following on with the comments, Dan's very active. Do you think the Habanos products made a wise decision on their pricing? Are they correct and the money will be spent, or did they misread the market? I mean, I think that's kind of what I was trying to say before. It's like, did they misread the market? Did they think like, oh yeah, we got this. Let's shoot those prices through the roof, and then they do it, and then it drops off. I feel like an opportunity to introduce the rest of the world to more New World cigars. It's a good point too. Yep. If that happens, New World cigars outside of the U.S., I think see a significant increase. Yep, I agree. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that changes the entire market as a whole too. You know, people who don't want to pay those prices, maybe they'll transition over to New World cigars. What they're known as outside the U.S.
They could, and that's why I think Dortmund's going to be a very interesting show this year in September because I think a lot of companies, like, that's a show that really is run by more the distributors, and the manufacturers support the distributors at that show. And I think you're gonna see a lot of people trying to get distribution.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Dortmund. We'll kind of change gears and go on a completely different topic for a second.
Uh-huh.
Davidoff and STG not going to Dortmund.
No surprise.
Yeah.
I think look, I just think Davidoff definitely not a surprise. Maybe a little bit STG, but Davidoff I think has shown that the trade show model is not for them. Like I said, a little surprised about STG because I think there was some ground to gain, for them to do in Europe. And they have Agio, which is still a pretty good brand out there. So yeah, I am a little surprised about STG. Davidoff, I'm not surprised about.
Yeah, so I mean, this when I saw that, it was like, okay, so this is not just a PCA thing. I mean, they're pulling out of other trade shows.
I mean, STG was a surprise because, like I said, yeah.
I mean, people have been talking about, like, of the big four, who could they see coming back? Davidoff's one of those brands that we said we don't expect to see back. STG was a maybe. Now that they pulled out of another trade show, I don't think so.
STG came back.
Well,
as far as I'm concerned, they came back with Room 101 this year.
If you want to be technical,
maybe
yeah.
they're maybe that's the route they're going to go, is kind of use a small presence, and if there's key brands they want to distribute, maybe they do it that way. So it's not making fun of them. I think there's some strategic. I think it was very strategic what they did. They had some projects with Matt Boost who worked on. They displayed it at Matt Boost booth. Sancho Panza, I think, is a big project for them, right? So I don't know if they need it. STGs, they're coming out with a new cigar every week this year, and that's not an exaggeration.
No,
why change that model and focus on some stuff you want to focus on at the trade show? I think they already came back. Is my answer on that.
We'll have to see how next year pans out.
I'm officially saying in the Cigar Coop world they came back. I understand that that's not maybe what everyone else thinks, but I actually think they came back this year.
Okay.
Yeah. They did.
So do you think they come back next year?
So do I think they come back bigger next year? I think that's a possibility. Yeah. So yeah. Do they come back and maybe have an STG booth? I think yeah, but I think it will be much smaller scale than what we've seen. I think it's a good chance. I think a lot of people are saying now two of those companies. Look, here's the problem. I think we talked about it in the last show.
Yeah.
Now PCA is holding a little bit of the leverage here. They had a pretty good show. So now how much do they really need to concede to these other companies for them to come back? That's gonna be the $1 million question.
That's true. I don't think Davidoff's coming back.
I don't think Davidoff's coming back.
I think they're doing their own thing. I think they're going rogue.
And if you're looking at moving the show to New Orleans in 2 years, I don't know if that's going to set anyone to come back. So,
what'd you say?
If they look at moving the show back to New Orleans, I don't know how much incentive that's going to be for anyone to come back.
For any of the big four.
Right. I think it's honestly. And here's why. I think it's a lot of uncertainty with that. New Orleans is going to have a lot. I think they'd rather see. Let's see how New Orleans goes before we make that type of investment. So it's not saying. Look, I don't think the show should be in New Orleans, but let's take that out of the equation. You're changing. You're making a big change here. So why would I, if I'm Drew Estate, spend a ton of money if I don't know how New Orleans is going to go? So.
And if you're in the process of trying to bring those people back, is that something that they look at when renewing that contract? Like, hey, if we move the show, we may lose any progress we could have made bringing some people back that we really should have at the show.
Yeah.
And maybe not make that move. Play it safe.
I think. This is what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to put it back in Vegas. I really do. But if this thing goes to New Orleans, you'll see some people very excited, and then when they get to the trade show and they forget what the 2015 trade show was like, they'll be reminded pretty quickly, and how after our activity sucked, right? How everything was spread out. There was no central place. New Orleans ain't a safe city, guys. It's not a safe city. Vegas is a lot safer than New Orleans. There's areas in New Orleans you got to be careful where you're walking, right? So. I'm just saying, there's a lot that's going to go into that.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, and it'll be curious to see how that happens.
Grass is always green. Grass is always greener, is what I'm saying. Keep the show in Vegas, guys, unless especially for a city that doesn't support us at all. Like they've totally tried to implement prohibition on our products any way possible. Why are we rewarding them with our Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, why give them the
When
business,
when
right?
when LA couldn't keep their football teams, LA didn't get any more Super Bowls till they got a football team back. So it's the same analogy. I don't think we should be doing business with them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good point. It's a fair
Yep.
point.
Yep.
The hour 45 mark.
Yes, already.
I'm gonna throw the ball in your court. If you want to mix it up, anything you want to cover before we wrap up the show tonight?
Let me ask one question. And I forget if we talked about this on the last show.
Okay.
Did you notice that there was certain booze that the online media really ignored this year?
You did not ask me that question.
Yeah. I know it's PCA talk, but it was something that it's coming up in my editorial, so I'm previewing it a little. Because I think I have some thoughts on how online media as a whole covered the show. And the fact that I saw very little coverage out of Oliva was incredible. No one covered Oliva except for me and Charlie. And I was flabbergasted. Is what I'm just saying, to say the least. There was just no coverage. Think about it. There was and by the way, they had a lot going on, and and Oliva's always been a very helpful. Now, I'm going to take you out of this, Matt, because you had some issues, unfortunately. So you couldn't cover everything like you wanted to do, right?
Oh yeah, I know.
There were a lot of other brands, and I'm not trying to disparage a small brand, right? But there were certain small brands that made no attempt to contact us throughout the year, right? Insisting on just only dealing with Half Wheel. And then they're begging us to come to their booths, right? And I saw those booths being covered. But again, Oliva, who was very helpful at the booths, by the way. They had people willing to help us and talk to media. Oliva was practically ignored at this trade show. And I don't understand why.
To be honest with you, I haven't noticed because I haven't really been looking at everyone else's coverage.
Okay.
Because I'm.
It hasn't come up. No one's talking about Oliva on any recap shows.
But now that
I'm the only one talking about Oliva at a recap show. Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, you're right. I haven't heard much about Oliva.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about this topic because I don't know. I just haven't thought about it. But now that you say it, now I'm thinking. I'm like, yeah. There's some names I haven't really heard people talking about.
Yeah. It's just now. Padron. There wasn't a lot of booth coverage of Padron, but there was some. We covered the Padron booth, but we couldn't interview George. Unfortunately, it was a lot harder to get to George and Carlito this year than last year. It just was, right?
Understandably so.
Yeah, understand. No, and very few people got to him, right? But we still covered their booths, right? So I don't know. It was just something I was looking at. And I'm like, well, why is this why is online media paying more attention to if I say a name, I'm gonna get in trouble, right? But because I don't want to disturb, but why is that going on? And like I said, Oliva, a company that I think should absolutely be getting coverage, especially there's a lot going on with that. It's not, and I had here's a couple of others. La Aurora, no coverage for La Aurora this year.
Yep, you're right. I haven't heard anything about La Aurora.
You and I and Charlie were the only ones to cover Ashton, as far as I know. You did cover Ashton.
We did.
We were the only. Nothing. Ashton had more going on than people think. By the way,
they did.
They did, because there's a lot of things they're doing with La Aroma de Cuba that they're making a lot of strategic moves, and I think some of the branding they're doing on that is really, really key. But I don't know. I just sat there and I'm like, why are these not being covered by the online media? But and you can name some of the companies very easily that no one's heard of, and they don't engage with the media. But here's the thing: and people may go because they're low-hanging fruit. I get it, but Oliva wasn't such a low-hanging fruit. It was pretty easy, and always the key thing is if you can't get help, go to your rep. That's always what I'll do next. Your rep will usually help you out. Yeah.
What about Gurkha? How many people covered Gurkha?
Several covered Gurkha.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay.
They did. There was several covering Gurkha, but it's less than it used to be. And by the way, the Gurkha folks are great.
Fantastic.
Bianca coming back has been. Juan's always been great to Cigar Coop over the years.
Yep.
So I've always, but Juan has so much on his plate, right?
He does.
So Bianca's come back to. She used to be with Gurkha years ago, and she's been awesome to deal with. And they got some good story to tell with that. So yeah, they were a lot more organized this year as well. So last year was a little disorganized getting help with the booze. So with Bianca there, it made it easier.
Yeah, she was fantastic. I can't say enough about her. I think I talked about her in the last show.
Yeah.
Bianca was fantastic, very helpful. You
Right.
know, I think it was great having her involved.
Yeah.
She's like the gatekeeper to Juan, and she keeps him on track.
Yeah.
Just the two of them together, it was awesome to see.
They
them.
are. Yeah. And you know, another guy, Raul at CLE, very helpful.
Very helpful.
He came to the booth. He dropped what he was doing. I mean, and Tom's a little mad. I was critical of the booth this year, but I was right. It wasn't that they had, and my CLE article comes out tomorrow, and there's no criticism really, except they couldn't get their product, and that was a huge loss when you're covering a booth, when the product's not there, you know. So
I agree. I mean, I know that it was.
It's unfortunate it happened. I'm not blaming anyone, but I can't give participation trophy points here. But
you got to be
again,
critical, yeah.
But here's the thing: I was able to cover the booths because Raul did a great job, and Christian and Tom, they all helped us out there. Yeah. So I look at that. And when you have a person who's very helpful, it makes it a lot easier.
I would agree. I think that they have a strong team over there. Raul has
Yeah.
always been fantastic. Anything I ever need, I reach out to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really makes these brands too, is just some of the staff that are lesser known, that we know, we get to meet and we talk to, even consistently, when stuff comes out over. Those are the people that really make shit happen.
Yeah, I mean, you covered Ashton, right?
I did.
Andy's great. Now, Andy was very busy. We couldn't get to Andy. I feel bad, but we still covered the booths. I went through my rep last year. That's how I met Andy, and they were great. I mean, like I said, we got all the help we needed. Somebody just got to ask the question, because there is that helpful person. Maybe not like a Raul or Bianca who we know, but there is someone who's willing. And I found, Matt, just so you know, 8 or 9 years ago, that was a lot tougher to do with online media to get help in a booth. So I understand that, but the world's changed. This is not like Blogger World 2010 anymore, is what I'm telling people. So I wish the media would cover these booths, because I want to hear other perspectives of what I love about. I love hearing other perspectives. And what's interesting is I'm doing my recaps, and I'll watch a video of yours, or I'll watch a video of Dojo's, and I'm like, damn, they didn't tell us that information. And it's like, it's too late. I don't have the photos or anything. But it's still good that, there's other little nuggets out there in certain things.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and it diversifies some of the coverage too.
Right, exactly.
Which is, I guess, each one of us benefits in our own way, depending on what we were told. But yeah, no, I'm thinking about that now, and I'm going to continue to think about it. And I think maybe by next time, I'll even have a better answer for you.
Yeah,
but it's true. I think some booths. I don't know if there's like a personal stigma or whatever it is, but I think some booths just get missed. I don't think it's because they did anything wrong. I think people just get into, and I'm not speaking about myself. I don't know. I just feel like it's hard to get every booth, right? Especially as the media.
Yeah.
I think that everyone kind of goes in there with this, whether it's actually on paper or if it's just in their mind. There's 30 brands that they're like, I have to go to them first. I can't miss them at this show. And then everyone else is like, if we get there, we get there. And I think everyone's priority list is different. Yeah. And I think that's part of it.
Yeah, we're giving show spots to people who we couldn't get to talk to at the show. So we gave them some, we'll give them show spots on our podcast. But, and that's a way we can build our relationship, because sometimes we don't have a relationship with the company. And I'll give you a good example of one that happened. Cigar Medics, right?
Yeah.
Well, they sent out product to people and then send me a press release late. I'm like, guys, you already sent the product to people. What do you want me to do with this? You have people just talking about the product already. I'm like, you want me to put a story out there? It's costing me. And they didn't realize that, right?
Right.
So I said to them, we'll go see you, but I had to put them at the bottom of the list, right? Because there's other companies, right? And then they left the show a day early because of COVID. It wasn't their fault, but I understand that. But, that's like I tell people, we want to deal with you 365 days a year, not 4 days a year. So if you deal with us 365 days a year, I'm going to make every effort to make sure we give you coverage one way or another. We made sure this year, Matt, that there were like we had a team of 4, and we tend to work as a 4-man team because we each have a specialized role.
Yeah.
But there were times we had to splinter this off, and we did that. Like, and a good example was like at the press conference, the guys covered 3 or 4 booths while we were at the media press conference. And they said, "Do you care?" I said, "Go to whoever you want." That's what I told them. So they got the Placencia, which was probably the smartest move. I didn't get to see Nestor, but you know what? We got the booth covered. I feel good at least that we got it covered. So, I'll see Nestor some other time.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it is interesting, how certain people get covered and some don't, and how maybe certain people get certain booths and then other people don't get certain booths, and there's definitely a pattern.
Yeah. I was disappointed there wasn't enough written coverage either. You've upped your game on written coverage, which is good.
And I'm behind. I still have more to do. I've had a lot on my plate.
It's a slower and it's a slower process. It will slow down the process. There's no way around it. It takes a while. And I noticed that you're not going for wrapper binder filler. If you want to go wrapper binder filler, you can knock these out quick, is what I'll tell people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to do other things, tell a little story behind the story, which is I think what we've both been doing, it takes a lot more time. So
right.
I only can do about 2 or 3 of these a day. Yeah.
So
before I'm just like burnt out. Yeah.
I'm hopefully going to get caught up this week on a lot more. But yeah, I mean, it is a process. But that's what.
Yeah, we usually go about 45 days after the show. And what I'm doing is I do the happy hours thing now. Every day at 5:00, we'll be unveiling a new interview, article, and then some days we're doing bonus coverage at 6. There's other articles that don't have video, so some of those will be covered. So that's how we're just rolling it out and giving it, and we're kind of for the most part going in booth order. So with that, so yeah.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more coverage from me. As I said, I have to get caught up on a couple of things, but I'll be working on that.
Yep.
We're at the 2-hour mark though, and I'm going to cut it here.
No problem. I think we got everything. Yep.
Yeah, I think we got everything this week. Coop, once again, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Everyone watching at home with us, thank you. Everyone listening, thank you for following us. Don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Everywhere you can find your podcasts on the podcast platforms and podcast apps. We greatly appreciate that. Find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I use my LinkedIn for smoking tobacco. I don't think Coop does. I think he used that for his personal stuff, so don't follow him there. But anyway, you can find us there. As always, visit smokingtobacco.com for more news from the cigar industry as well as our PCA coverage. And while you're at it, head over to cigar-coop.com because they do some good shit over there too. So don't miss out on their coverage. They have some fun stuff that they do. Coop, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. This week on the Smoking Tobacco Show, we have Berta Bravo, also known as the Guayabera Lady.
Oh, she's awesome. Oh,
she is.
Well, that's a good. Yeah, I like her.
Yeah, she is. She's awesome. She's sweet. We're gonna kind of mix it up a little bit, go a little bit different direction in the cigar conversation, and so tune in for that. It's always nice to have another Sister of the Leaf on the show, and that's gonna do it for us this week.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Thanks to our audience. We'll catch everyone next time.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Take care.